The record number of migrants crossing into the U.S. pushing resources to the limit in many American cities.
6 new buses with migrants will be arriving at some point later today as more than 110,000 migrants have arrived in New York City.
At least 3 more buses of migrants just arrived at the Port Authority, despite this new executive order from Mayor Adams that just took effect overnight.
The extreme migrant emergency situation in New York is getting out of control. The hundreds of migrant buses, filled with thousands upon thousands of migrants, have driven the city to a state of chaos.
A disturbing crime caught on camera showing a group of people punching and kicking 2 NYPD officers in Times Square over the weekend. So far, 5 arrests have been made, but 4 of those suspects have already been released on bail.
Many citizens worry for themselves and their families' safety. As migrants keep rolling in, it begs the question, how can migrants stay in New York if they risk the lives of the city's residents? This bold step challenges the city's promise of shelter. With laws that guarantee shelter for those in need, the city faces a real test, managing this surge without turning its back on its citizens. It's a moment that asks, what happens when New York meets an immigration nightmare? And is Mayor Eric Adams up for the task? Stay with us as we delve deeper into New York's intensifying migrant crisis. The migrant buses.
Buses of migrants arrived overnight at the former Manhattan Police Academy, now being transformed into an emergency shelter.
In the bustling heart of New York City, an unprecedented scene unfolds as hundreds of buses roll into the Big Apple. These are no ordinary buses filled with tourists. Instead, they carry migrants seeking refuge in the city, a direct consequence of decisions made miles away in the corridors of power in Washington, D.C.
3 more buses filled with migrants arriving in New York City. This comes as Texas Governor Greg Abbott repeatedly sends thousands of migrants from the border state to Democrat-run cities like Washington, D.C. and New York.
Governor Abbott has directed these buses to NYC, spotlighting the city's declaration as a sanctuary city, trying to even out the massive burden the border state Texas is facing. This influx isn't just a mere trickle of individuals looking for a new start. It's a veritable flood, challenging the city's infrastructure and its residents' patience, putting the citizens' lives at great risk. The city finds itself grappling with the reality of becoming a magnet for migrants. This situation spells trouble, and not just in capital letters. Critics argue it's a catastrophe in the making, with the potential to tip the city into a crisis and ultimately destroy the city. The heart of the issue is not just the sheer number of arrivals, but the composition.
A migrant robbery ring plaguing New York, with suspects getting away on scooters. Police saying they're looking for the ringleader.
Among the many seeking a better life, there are individuals whose intentions are far from pure. The narrative being pushed focuses heavily on the criminal elements within this massive influx, painting a dire picture of increased crime rates and safety concerns for New Yorkers. Keep watching as we will explore this issue in just a few moments.
Driven by bus and fueled by politics, another wave of migrants arrived in New York City today.
The streets of New York are now choked with the additional pressure. Tensions simmer as residents navigate a city transforming before their eyes, not into the gleaming beacon of hope and prosperity it once was, but into a battleground of safety and survival. Spike in migrant crimes.
We know that there have been reports of crime increasing in that area from those asylum seekers.
Back here at home, one asylum seeker accused of killing another tonight on Randall's Island. Both were staying at the migrant center there. Police say the 2 men got into a fight and one the other in the chest.
The influx of migrants has brought with it an undercurrent of criminality, challenging the very fabric of public safety. The NYPD finds itself stretched thin, wading through an escalating sea of incidents. Criminal and even more nefarious activities have spiked, fueling anxiety and fear among the populace. The statistics tell a tale of a city under siege, not from an external enemy, but from within its own borders.
New York City is facing an increase in crime and gangs as gangs are recruiting migrants.
This escalation in crime does not just represent numbers on a chart. It translates to real-world consequences for the city's residents. Families, once secure in their urban lives, now face a daily gauntlet of risks. The streets, alleys, and parks have become arenas of unease. Citizens venture out with a wary eye, their confidence in the city's safety net shaken. How can you feel safe with criminals and sicklings freely roaming the streets of your home. The pressure mounts on the shoulders of the city's leadership, from the Mayor Eric Adams' office to the halls of federal power, where the response to this burgeoning crisis is scrutinized. Inaction and a lack of effective strategy to stem the tide of migrant-induced criminality is the hot topic for critics of Eric Adams and the Biden administration as a whole. It is believed that they have sought temporary solutions to a problem in dire need of proper fixing.
Close the borders now. This is not sustainable for our country. It's not sustainable for our cities. This is a violent thing that you've done, and many people are dying.
The government's counterparts have thrown their eyes towards the border, praying for an immediate shutdown. The housing challenges.
Hundreds of angry New Yorkers taking to the streets to voice one message. They're protesting the construction of a new relief center for the hundreds of migrants arriving in New York City every week.
The city now finds itself ensnared in a complex web of housing challenges, a direct fallout from the massive influx of migrants. As migrants pour into the city, the demand for shelter skyrockets, but the supply?
People seeking asylum are crammed together, sharing what food they have and waiting, hoping they'll be able to get a bed inside the historic Roosevelt Hotel turned shelter.
The city's housing is already overwhelmed, so how would it even be remotely possible to house this enormous migrant surge? New York is at a loss. The streets now host a burgeoning population of the displaced. Tents mushroom overnight, sprawling encampments that are a stark testament to the crisis at hand. They dot the landscape, makeshift homes for those who come unannounced to the city. But the challenge doesn't end with tents on sidewalks or parks turned into temporary settlements. The very fabric of community safety and comfort is being tested.
New numbers from the NYPD show an uptick in subway crime, especially robberies and thefts.
These migrants put the lives of the citizens at great risk. Residents now navigate a reality where unease lurks around every corner. The migrants, many of whom are fleeing dire circumstances, bring with them not just their hopes but also the specter of illness and a fraction, albeit a visible one, marked by criminal intent. The financial strain on the city's coffers is palpable. Housing thousands of individuals is no small feat, especially when the ledger is already stretched thin. The cost is astronomical. Taxpayer dollars are now being diverted to address an emergency of unprecedented scale.
Confusion and frustration at New York's newest emergency migrant shelter after a group of migrant families refused to stay in the makeshift tent city that's set up to house 500 families.
The city authorities construct big tents from the ground, a band-aid and much short-scaled solution. Yet it's far from enough. The mathematics of space, safety, and resources doesn't add up, leaving city officials scrambling for solutions while the meter of public patience runs perilously low and migrants keep on rolling in. The government's response.
The mayor says migrants will be given $13 a day for food and baby products.
It's supposed to go to only food and baby supplies. If it's abused, we will take those cards away.
At the forefront is Mayor Eric Adams, who has taken steps that, while intended to address the immediate needs of the migrants, have sparked debate on their long-term efficacy and vision. One of the most visible actions has been the construction of tent cities. Erected as a quick fix to provide shelter for the incoming masses, these tent cities have become symbols of the crisis itself. Visible, sprawling, and impermanent solutions to a deeply rooted problem. Mayor Adams' approach, characterized by the rush to erect these makeshift communities, has been critiqued as a band-aid on a bullet wound. While providing temporary relief, critics argue that it fails to address the core issues at hand: the need for sustainable housing, integration into the community, and a long-term plan for both migrants and the city itself.
Community members are planning a protest outside the latest site to house migrants arriving in our area.
The construction of tent cities, though a gesture towards immediate shelter, is seen by many as a short-sighted strategy, sidestepping the urgent need for durable solutions in favor of quick, visible action.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
On the national stage, President Joe Biden's policies have come under scrutiny, particularly the decision to allow a significant number of migrants to enter the country. This federal stance, while rooted in a commitment to human rights and asylum, has had tangible impacts on cities like New York, where the brunt of providing for these individuals often falls. The local and federal responses, when viewed together, paint a picture of a crisis managed through temporary measures, leaving the public and critics alike questioning the roadmap to a more sustainable, long-term solution.
A popular service center for seniors in Queens now facing a rather big problem. The Mayor Adams administration designating the center's parking lot as a new home to hundreds of migrants seeking asylum here. And that means some of the center's services will be cut. Two important issues and programs colliding, each much needed.
The gap between immediate actions and the need for comprehensive planning remains a contentious point, highlighting the complexity of governing in times of humanitarian need. The residents' response.
Protests turning violent amid a growing humanitarian crisis in New York City as migrants and asylum seekers continue to arrive.
Police preparing for more migrant shelter protests today. And this comes as protests turned violent outside of Gracie Mansion yesterday.
The response from New York City's residents to the swelling migrant crisis has been a storm of discontent, marked by palpable anger and fervent protests. The streets of the city, once a mosaic of harmonious diversity, have become stages for demonstrations as citizens voice their frustration with an issue that directly affects their daily lives and sense of security.
Sunday's protest near Gracie Mansion quickly turned violent with fights breaking out. That outburst leading to 5 arrests, and now police are bracing for more demonstrations.
This isn't just a ripple of concern. It's a tidal wave of grievance against what many see as an unsustainable situation thrust upon them. The crux of their ire, a growing sense that the influx of migrants, many perceived as bringing crime and economic burden, is transforming their neighborhoods in ways they neither anticipated nor desired. Residents, who pride themselves on the city's rich tapestry of cultures and histories, now find themselves grappling with the reality of tent cities cropping up in parks, schools strained by sudden increases in enrollment, and local resources stretched to breaking points.
Another night of protests at a former Catholic school in Staten Island now being used to house migrants.
Hundreds of people who live near the former St. John Villa Academy are demanding that the city shut it down.
This widespread discontent has not been a quiet whisper, but a loud chorus demanding attention and action. The residents' protests are not just about the migrants themselves, but a critique of governmental actions perceived as inadequate or misdirected. The very essence of these demonstrations is a call for a reevaluation of policies, for strategies that look beyond immediate Band-Aid solutions to the deeper, more complex issues at the heart of this crisis. Anger and frustration have led to scenes of residents clashing with policymakers, demanding accountability, and advocating for a city that maintains its identity while addressing the needs of its newest arrivals in a manner that is both compassionate and pragmatic.
Another migrant shelter here in the city confronted by another protest and counter-protest, this time outside the Manhattan College, where city officials plan to turn a former dorm into temporary emergency housing.
These protests happening as asylum seekers are now only permitted to stay in the temporary housing for 30 days.
This is a city at a crossroads, with its residents vocal and unyielding in their demand for a path forward that reconciles the values of sanctuary and community with the realities of capacity and sustainability. How to fix the crisis.
And let's also come together on immigration. Make it a bipartisan issue once again.
Starting with President Biden, his administration has largely focused on a more compassionate approach to immigration, emphasizing the need for humane policies that provide asylum seekers and migrants with legal pathways to enter the United States. This stance, while noble in its intent to uphold the values of refuge and opportunity, has faced criticism for potentially encouraging a surge in migration without adequately addressing the infrastructure and resources needed to support it.
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall.
Former President Trump's approach stood in stark contrast, famously championing the construction of a border wall and advocating for stricter immigration policies. His administration focused heavily on deterrence, arguing that closing the border and tightening immigration controls were essential for national security and economic well-being. Trump's stance, characterized by a hardline approach to border security, resonates with those who view the migrant influx as a threat to American jobs, safety, and culture.
There's only one reason why this is happening,
And that's because Joe Biden has eliminated all of the 4 policies that Donald Trump put in place that led to the lowest illegal border crossings in 40 years.
And there are some very simple reasons why we're having to do this. The primary reason is because Joe Biden is not doing his job. Joe Biden is responsible for the largest amount of illegal immigration in the history of the United States.
Governor Abbott of Texas has similarly advocated for stringent border controls, taking proactive measures to send migrants to sanctuary cities as a statement against what he perceives as lax immigration policies at the federal level. His actions underscore a belief in the necessity of closing the borders as a means to pressure the federal government into taking more decisive action on immigration reform and border security. Each of these stances represents a different vision for addressing the migrant crisis, reflecting a broader national debate over the balance between security, humanitarian obligations, and the identity of America as a nation of immigrants. The challenge lies in finding a middle ground that secures the border and respects the rule of law while also providing for the humane treatment of migrants and addressing the root causes of migration. This ongoing dialogue is a testament to the complexity of the crisis and the need for nuanced, multifaceted solutions. Conclusion. In the whirlwind saga of the migrant crisis, the city streets have become stages for a drama that unfolds daily, casting shadows on the storied facade of the American dream. This narrative, rich with tension and conflict, challenges the nation to confront its values, policies, and humanity. As the tale progresses, the conclusion, though not yet written, hinges on a pivotal question. How does a nation built by immigrants reconcile its past with its present and future? The migrant crisis, with its complex layers and far-reaching implications, calls for a resolution that transcends political divides and short-term fixes. It demands a visionary approach that marries security with compassion, pragmatism with idealism.
Let me tell you something, New Yorkers.
The migrant crisis taking on a new tone.
Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City.
The characters in this drama, political leaders, city officials, residents, and migrants themselves, are entwined in a plot that requires not just action, but reflection on what it means to be part of a global community in the 21st century. Amid the cacophony of voices and opinions, the core of the issue remains: a quest for safety, opportunity, and a better life. This is not just the migrant story. It's a chapter in the larger American narrative, one that asks whether the nation can navigate the complexities of modern migration while staying true to its foundational principles. The conclusion, therefore, is not an end, but a beginning. It's a call to action for innovative policies, international cooperation, and, most importantly, empathy and understanding. As the curtain falls on each day's events, the real work begins, not in building walls, but in bridging divides, not in casting out, but in welcoming in. The resolution of the migrant crisis will ultimately be a measure of the nation's character, a testament to its ability to adapt, grow, and remain a beacon of hope in an ever-changing world.